So, as Michael, Adam, and yourself just came back from Menuga in Germany the other week, what was the general sort of sentiment with regard to global demand?
Well, demand. The show was. Maybe I'm getting increasingly cynical in my old age, but the show was the least fizzy I'd seen for a long time. Of course, it's a huge show, so you're talking about nearly 100, I think 120,000 visitors to this show, and it's an opportunity for us to meet many suppliers that we deal with. And I would say that what was lurking around in the back of people's minds was demand is pretty flat at the moment, and it shouldn't be. Should be the peak time.
Yeah.
But it's not as certainly not as fizzy as the last few years have been.
Yeah.
And where we'll point to would be the higher prices, particularly in nut kernels. Things are in fact a lot fizzier in seeds. There is more demand coming every day, but nut kernels is suffering because of the high prices, basically $4 plus. And then at the same time, if you're talking about the ones which are cheaper, like cashews maybe $3.40. Inability to get demand kicked off because the price on the shelves doesn't appear for about 9 months. So how do you stimulate demand in those kind of circumstances? So a bit flat there. We saw some almond boys. Almond boys were they're bringing in the crop now, and they're not getting many sales. If you look at sales in the last 3 weeks, the prices gone down by 60 cents and then come up by 15-20 cents. When it came down to 60 cents, there wasn't a lot of buying, right? And maybe the market thought, well, they're not going to buy now because they're expecting maybe even sharper, lower prices.
So that's very interesting how even with the price drop, demand didn't.
Yeah, that's right. That's what that tells you is what's called demand destruction is going on. In other words, people are selling less. And if you go into the Sainsbury's or whatever, I was in Sainsbury's and I was looking at the roasted nuts, well, the snack section, which used to be dominated by roasted nuts. A year and a half ago, you'd have seen it full of hickory flavored almonds, various different flavors of almonds, pistachios, etc. And nuts have lost a lot of ground in this area. There's a lot less nuts, and there's a lot more flour and water type snacks, crisps, tapioca pellets, sacks. How do those nuts re-enter? Well, it takes a long time now because you have to get them listed and you have to show consistently low prices, because supermarkets don't like in this situation where they're under attack so particularly in the UK maybe, don't like to see suddenly high prices on their shelves because they feel that the customer will generalize to Tesco's is getting very expensive or something like this, and then God forbid goes to an Aldi or a Lidl or something.
Yeah, right. Right. The rise of discount stores.
Yeah.
Related to, and there was quite a lot of talk of El Nino too, wasn't there?
Well, there is a lot of El Nino. There's not. El Nino is defined by a temperature change in the surface temperature of the Pacific.
Warming, and
it's an 11-year cycle.
Does it purely relate to temperature change, or is it specifically related to warming?
It's not to do with global warming. It's an 11-year cycle, which is defined in, you can say it's an El Nino event when the temperature in the Pacific, surface temperature, is 1%, half a degree higher than the average.
Right.
Last time I looked was in July, but the temperature then was 1 3/4 degrees above. If it's 2, then it's definitely a strong El Nino year. This year's so this is something that will happen between the next in the next 6 months. Is we expect a strong El Nino event, and that means and they've called it Bruce Lee, is it? Or
Bruce Lee, yeah.
Yeah, Bruce Lee. People are expecting a strong event. What happens in a strong event? Well, all the Western Americas, the coast of the Western Americas, everywhere from, say, Washington to Tierra del Fuego, gets a lot of rain, and we're talking serious amounts of rain here. The last strong El Nino event we had, the Californian landslides, mudslides, and the other side, on the Australian side, drought.
Yeah.
So a switch around, and but this is the point. The point is that you can have climate's a thing which is like a living entity. You can talk about climate, which is a huge, which is a sort of averaging out of particular weathers, and you can talk about the weather.
Yeah.
We don't know what the weather's going to be like. Because there are a lot of specific things. The El Nino, if it falls, if say in California, it doesn't reach the Sierra Nevada and just falls on the plain, then it'll just wash away and that will be it.
Yeah.
But if it lands on the mountains and it fills the reservoirs, then we'll have that's a game changer for the Californian almonds, for instance. We know there's going to be an El Nino year. We don't know if there's going to be flooding with the Brazils. Almost certainly. My bet is on serious flooding with the Brazils. But we don't know exactly what happens. And the reason I'm clutching at this bit of paper here is because, weather's a complex interaction. And this piece of paper says, this is from the Times, the satellite data show that there's been roughly a 14% increase in the amount of green vegetation on this planet since 1982. And this is because of the increased CO2 levels. People know, it's a fact, that increased CO2 increases, it's like fertilizer, it increases the yield. It's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a fact. And what that means is that crops might be 14% more efficient.
So this is particularly in arid and tropical areas we're seeing this massive.
What it does is makes in arid areas, it makes it easier for plants to grow. But what we're talking about is a general 14% increase in the amount of vegetation that's growing, and that's vegetation that's been commercially farmed, everything including the rainforest, the whole caboodle. So whilst you might have some idea of large-scale processes, what we can never say is what's going to happen in 6 months' time. So I'm trying to give you a picture which is saying that you can look at it's a bit like studying the form of horses in a horse race. You can make an educated guess, a betting man's guess as to what might happen, but you never know what will happen.
Sure.
So global uncertainty feeds on itself.
Okay, thank you.